Good afternoon, members. These are all very welcome to May's Governance and Strategic Planning Committee meeting. And I am going to pass over to John for the members' attendance and apologies.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. To all members of the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of the committee, which will be a hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically here in the Council Chamber in the Guildhall, Tuesday, the 6th of May at 4 o'clock. Starting with the roll call, Alderman Cook.
Online, John.
Alderman Hussey. Alderman Wilkinson.
Apologies.
Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Sandra Duffy.
Joe.
Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Hart.
And Shaw.
Councillor Heaney.
And Shaw.
Councillor Jackson.
And Shaw.
Councillor McDaid.
Online, John.
Councillor McGinley.
Sure.
Councillor Mooney. Councillor O'Farrell.
Shaw, John.
And Councillor Tierney. Thank you, members. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Moving on now to the broadcasting statement. Members, I'd like to remind everyone physically present at this meeting or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with the protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you are consenting to be filmed and for the use and storage of these images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded they only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting, and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the council privacy notice may be found on the council website. You would have thought I would know that off by heart by now. Moving on to declarations of members' interest. No, I have none online.
So just declaring a notice on the board of CODA.
Okay. So that I've just noticed, I actually thought you were coming on with a different conflict, somewhere to myself, but I feel that I need to err on the side of caution and declare an interest as an employee in Western Health and Social Care Trust.
Chair, just for completeness sake, Denise, myself and Alfie also declaring as CODA board members.
Okay, Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair, for reminding me I should declare an interest in the Western Trust presentation as well. My husband works for the Trust. Thank you very much. And I suppose while I'm here, there's an item on the Housing Executive as well. I work in the homeless sector, so I'm funded by the Housing Executive. So just for full transparency today.
Okay, Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. It's just the delegation is on. There was some mention of planning on it, the one that's coming on now, and I'm just wondering, would that affect members of the planning committee? And maybe discussion of plans or things like that there, but I know I'm a member of the planning committee, but would it be any, I know it's probably a fine line, but no. Okay, just got advice there from the city solicitors. Thank you.
For my benefit as well, we've been advised that there's no conflict. So on that note, I want to, and it takes great pleasure, they welcome or move on to their deputations, and they welcome Pauline Campbell, the Director of the Northwest Development Office for the Department of Communities, who's no stranger to this chamber and the people here. Dr. Maura O'Neill, the Director of Community and Older People Services within the Western Health and Social Care Trust. Again, no stranger. And Wendy McLaughlin, Assistant Director. They update all our members on the potential developments on Fort George. It's a project that's been discussed quite often within this council chamber. It's an area that's extremely prominent, extremely significant to our council area, and we are very keen to see how the plans are progressing to deliver state-of-the-art facilities on the Fort George site. So without further ado, I'll pass over to yourselves. Pauline first.
Thanks very much, Chair. First of all, thanks to everyone here today. It's good to have the opportunity to come and to give you an update on the plans for Fort George. It's also good to be joined here with colleagues here from Western Health Social Care Trust. Between the three of us, we'll each take a part of the presentation here today. I think roughly we're aiming for around 15 minutes for the presentation, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions at the end. So if I can ask for the next slide, please. Okay, so all of you will be familiar with the Fort George site, I'm sure. And really just to give you an update in terms of the purpose of the meeting today. So really we want to update you on the progress of the development of the Fort George site and to brief you on the proposal of application notice, or the PAN submission as we call it, and pre-application discussions for the outline planning application. And there's an opportunity, as I said, at the end to raise questions. If we go to the next slide, please. So in terms of the proposal of application notice, and just to talk through exactly what the planning application is for. So it is in relation to your proposed erection of a new city-side health and care centre for the Western Health and Social Care Trust, including a multi-storey car park, site access roads and associated landscaping with additional public realm works. It includes pedestrian link to Key Trail and infrastructure works, including an upgrade to the Pennyburn roundabout to include additional lanes and associated junction improvements to support the development of the site. And as we said there, we've been working very closely, and we have been on a collaborative basis working through the planning application with our colleagues in the Western Health and Social Care Trust. So the next slide really just shows, I suppose, that bird's eye view of Fort George. And as I say, a lot of you will be familiar with it. But in terms of what's there at the minute, we have the Catalyst building there at the top right. There's a small telly house towards the left of the site, and really the rest of the site, and it's an 11-acre site, is for future development. The next slide shows the proposed layout in broad terms as part of the planning application. So as you can see there at the very, very top, you can see there the reference to the Cityside Health and Care Centre. So that's adjacent to the Strand Road. Moving over to the right there, you can see the reference to the Catalyst 1 building. That's the building that's there on site. And then there's reference there to a proposed Catalyst 2 building. Some of you will be familiar, obviously, that Catalyst have planning permission for a second building there on site. We also then, if we move to the left of the site, you'll see that reference there to the MSCP, and that refers to the proposed multi-storey car park for the site. There's also plans there in terms of the wider site for 3 further development plots. I suppose just to emphasise as well that in terms of the site from a DLC perspective, and in discussion with our colleagues in the planning side, we want the site to be a key site in terms of placemaking. We want the site to be welcoming for pedestrians, and we want it to have good, strong placemaking focus in terms of public realm. So that's a key emphasis, and there's a number of different points there where we want to really emphasise that pedestrian focus and that public realm element. And then you'll see there's the blue line which sort of divides up or sort of comes through the site there in the middle, and that just outlines, I suppose, the protected route, as we call it, and that linkage to the riverfront as well. If we move then to the next slide, please, just to show through here. So this shows in broad terms the proposed traffic flow for the site. So in terms of if you're driving on to Fort George, you'll currently come in through the Bay Road entrance, and that will remain the same. So the entrance into the Fort George site will be through and will remain to be on the Bay Road entrance into the site. So you can see there at the top right, where you can see there the pink and the blue, that really signifies the main entrance, the key entrance into the Fort George site. And then in terms of exit, you can either exit again out onto the Bay Road, that same point, you can exit back onto the Bay Road, or you can exit there. If you can look over to the left, you see there the pink showing a left turn onto the Strand Road. So that would be the other exit point onto the Strand Road. Important just to emphasise, I suppose, a number of key things there as well. You can see there a dotted blue line, and that allows for a drop-off point beside the Health and Care Centre, but it also allows good circulatory movement throughout the site, so that cars can circulate and exit the site safely as well. So yes, there's a lot of work concentrating on the traffic flow, but at the same time focusing on that pedestrian aspect and making sure that there is a pedestrian focus on the site as well. If we move to the next slide, please. So this one here, I suppose, shows in terms of what we call the red lands and the blue lands. So the planning application that we are working on is in relation to the red lands, and that's what we're currently going through the public consultation for at the moment. And the red lands you can see there encompasses a body of land, obviously within the Fort George site, but also it encompasses the Pennyburn roundabout as well. And it's important to highlight that there because the roundabout is key to this application, because in order for further major development to happen on the site, we need to see traffic mitigations happening, and the roundabout is key to that. So that's why the Pennyburn roundabout is included within the red lands application for the site. And also then we have the Health and Care Centre, the multi-storey car park, public realm and associated site access and infrastructure works as well that would be included in the red lands. I should highlight as well that there is the blue lands which relates to a proposed outline planning application for the remainder of the site, and as you can see there's those blue lands, and those would be the future development plans for the site. So if I pass over now to Maura, who's going to talk through from the Trust perspective.
Okay, thank you, Pauline, and thank you, everyone. We're delighted to have the opportunity today to come along and speak to you a little bit about the objectives of the Cityside Health and Wellbeing Hub. And what we're going to do is Wendy and I are going to have a two-pronged approach here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the high level of what our objectives were, talk a little bit about what's contained within the Health and Wellbeing Centre, and then Wendy's going to take you through some of the drawings to make it real for you in terms of what it looks like as we move ahead over the next couple of slides. So the first bit in terms of what the objectives were, and I think you're all well aware of this, it is to develop and deliver a modern primary and community care facility. And our ambition really is about bringing and supporting a shift of services really from the hospital to primary and community care. And really within that is accommodating the growth of the need and the activity based on the current projections and trends. Two other key pieces which we're very keen on is to deliver services which are community-based, accessible, and to promote the uptake by the local community. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we move further into presentation. And then finally, to provide a range of primary and community care services, which in the next slide I'm going to bring you through from this facility, and that's to provide a really high quality service and from this really nice space. So we're really excited about this whole opportunity in terms of moving ahead. So next slide, please. So this kind of diagram, and hopefully you can see that okay, is to kind of demonstrate to you the key healthcare professionals and also the type of services that are going to be delivered from the Cityside Health and Wellbeing Centre. So first of all, at the top, we've talked about community and older people services, particularly around nursing and allied health professionals. And what we mean by that is physiotherapies, OTs and others. The primary care service is going to be a very big part for us, and this is particularly around our GPs, our multidisciplinary teams, and our GP out of hours service, which will relocate from Maltnagalvin. I'm then going to move to adult mental health and disability, and this is about providing, you'll see how we're talking about an integrated approach to health and social wellbeing, and adult mental health and disability services will also be contained within this premises. A number of the outpatient services, which is really exciting for us, will move from Maltnagalvin over to the centre, which is really important in terms of taking some of the services off that really busy site of Maltnagalvin. We'll also have a Northern Ireland ambulance deployment point, some radiology services, some children and family services, including dentistry. And that piece, which is really important, is about the community being really involved in this space where there will be some bookable rooms, but also, as Pauline has outlined to you, it's a really good space in terms of community and voluntary being involved as well. So I'm going to pass to Wendy in terms of her starting to show you some of where each of the services are located and to give you some graphical illustration of what this is proposed to look like. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Maura. Right, I am going to show you lots of pictures rather than speaking too much, because a picture probably will explain it much better. But this first slide really just gives you an illustration of what we think the building will look like from the Strand Road side. So again, just to orientate it, this building is going to be opposite Home Bargains. So it's not on the riverside, it's on the roadside. So that's a view from the Strand Road around the roundabout area. So you can see in the centre, there's an entrance point to the building at that stage as well, and there's one on the other side. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is the view from the other side, as if you were inside the Fort George site itself. So you can see just that red car is that loop road round to drop off that Pauline had talked about in the map earlier. And in the centre of the building is the entrance point in to it. So there'll be drop-off facilities, there'll be accessible parking facilities, and just to the left there where the ambulance is where the car park we hope is going to be as well. Okay, next slide, please. So this image just gives you a wee sense of the levels in the building. So really, there's a ground first and second floor, which will be the kind of public floors. So there'll be services based on those, obviously, that people can come in and attend to. The third floor is a staff floor, and you can see in the centre there's a bit of a fourth floor, which is really a plant floor. There's a lot of ventilation in the building, reflecting just change in ventilation standards to do with COVID. So there's quite substantial plant space made to make this building work. And I suppose maybe to even talk about the scale, the size of the building we think is around 14,000 square metres. So if anybody knows the North Wing building, the new building at Maltnagalvin site, it's about the same size as that, just to give you an idea, or the same size as the cancer unit at Maltnagalvin. They're both around that footprint. The other thing to point out just about this building is largely it's 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, but the ground floor could be a bit different. That could be more a 24/7 type building. So we're planning to relocate GP out of hours services from Maltnagalvin. So obviously they would be located there out of hours. More referred to community nursing. There's a lot of change happening in that world where we want to expand those type of services and make them work longer hours to serve the community as well for the benefit of that. So that would be on the ground floor. Radiology at the minute is something that operates 7 days a week. So that could be a sort of out of hours type service as well. So they're all co-located on the ground floor, as is the outpatient rooms, just trying to maximise the use of the building as well. So next slide, please. Thank you. So going inside, then this is the ground floor entrance area. So if you imagine you've just walked through from the Strand Road side, you'll see a cafe on your left-hand side. So it's kind of an open plan atrium space, and you can see right through then to the door at the end there, that shows you out to the Fort George side of the site. There's courtyards, there's 2 internal courtyards in the building, again trying to bring in light and brightness and airiness, plus it's sociable type spaces. We want these spaces to be used. So that's really the ethos behind the building. We're trying to kind of bring that light and airiness through, and also referencing back to the former site's shipbuilding history as well. So you can see some metal coming through there on the staircase. That's the intention behind that, but obviously that will evolve and develop as we move through the design now as well. So next slide, please. So going into the actual clinical rooms. So this is a typical clinical assessment room. So it could be a GP room, it could be an outpatient room. So they're designed to be very, very flexible, but also functional. So everything the clinician needs is going to be in that room and arranged in the most functional, flexible way. Also thinking about patient comfort as well. So that detail of those type of rooms has already been worked through as well. And then the next images, again, just give you a wee reflection of what we think this building will look like. Again, focusing on the central atrium space and the staircase over the different levels. And then the picture on the right-hand side at the bottom there just shows you the waiting areas. So there's things that hopefully most people are familiar about, like self-check-in, but there'll also be reception areas as well. And that's going to be needed. But again, open, airy, friendly, bright spaces is what we're going to try and achieve. And just the next slide then goes outside again, and it focuses on the multi-storey car park. So this is essential. It's a healthcare building. We need to have the right number of parking spaces there to support the client group that's coming to use the building. So the design that's been done, we're estimating we need about 700 spaces, but that would be for the health and care centre plus the Catalyst building that we have, and a potential future Catalyst building as well. So a multi-storey structure, we think that might be the best way to take this forward, because it protects as much of the rest of the site as we can for future development. The key to this is having it close to the health and care centres, so there's short distance for anybody walking from that multi-storey across. So these images just are starting to emerge. We're working through the design of that still, but it gives you an idea of what it would look like in the context of the Fort George site as well. And obviously, apart from the multi-storey, we also need close drop-off spaces, close accessible parking spaces, and they will be facilitated as well. And I think just the next slide is really there to give you a sense of the type of materials that we're going with. So these are just illustrative, but the main message behind it is we want this to be a high quality facility for the city and ourselves. We want it to be sustainable and robust. You know, it has to last for a long period of time. We want it to look really, really well. So that's the intention behind the design and what we'll be putting forward in the business case as well to support it. So the materials and the lighting and stuff will be of the highest quality. So if you don't mind, I'll just pass you back to Colin to do the final slide.
Just remembered my microphone there. So yeah, so just in terms of next steps, so really just to outline that we had our formal public consultation event there last Tuesday. There is still consultation happening, and today is part of that process, and we certainly welcome any feedback that we're getting today through this engagement with yourselves, and certainly any other feedback maybe in the coming weeks. So in terms of the time frame and where we're hoping to go going forward, we're hoping to submit a full planning application for the red lands, certainly as soon as possible within the coming months. And then also from a DFC perspective, we are also working on an outline planning application for the blue lands, which I referred to you there earlier. That will be subject to a separate PAN process, pre-application planning process, and we're happy to engage further at that stage as well, whenever we're at the stage for sharing more information around the blue lands as well. So yeah, so there's a lot happening on Fort George, a lot happening over the coming months, and certainly I think from our perspective, very welcome to, would welcome the engagement and the feedback that you can provide us as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline, Maura and Wendy. And I suppose Wendy's presentation, she did allude to the developments and recent developments that the trust have been involved in and the trust have completed at Dalton Galvin site. And I think when we're reading and looking through this presentation, there's a fair degree of confidence that the trust have a good track record of delivering high quality designs and buildings. So this presentation, this project has been long anticipated. We've actually mentioned this deputation a few times at committee. It's great to see it's finally here. The Fort George site, like Ebrington, had been former military sites that have been reclaimed. Ebrington site has certainly been reclaimed by the people of Derry, and hopefully Fort George, when we see the delivery of these projects, will share the same success that we've seen on the Ebrington site. So I'm going to open it to the floor for questions. I have a few indicated speakers. Councillor Duffy, and then Councillor Farrell. But Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair, and you're absolutely right, Chair. This has been a long anticipated presentation. Fort George is a strategic site within the city, and we have been waiting a long time to see the redevelopment of it. So thank you to yourself, Pauline and Maura and Wendy for coming along today. We have been really looking forward to this. Unfortunately, I didn't get to the consultation last week, but I knew you were coming in, so I knew I would have the opportunity to have a conversation with you. I don't really have very many questions for you because I just think in terms of the presentation, it's very clear that there has been a lot of thought put into what we want to see delivered. I know in previous presentations, I actually think the last presentation we had on the site was probably around COVID time, because I think I did it in my kitchen. And it was really interesting then to see, but it has moved on again from then. But the sort of general themes around it and integrated care and, making care more accessible and that whole community focus is very much still part of it, including then, of course, the public realm element of it and having that pedestrianised focus around that riverfront area, which is really important to us as a city and district and what we want to see. We want to see the riverfront looking beautiful. We want to see it opening up to the public more. And at this point in time, the Fort George site isn't really open to the public. You sort of walk past it if you're out the Bay Road, but this really will open it up to the public and people will be able to come in, access it. I'm glad to see that the plan application is going to include the Pennyburn roundabout element of it, because that has always been a bit of a stumbling block, and is probably the element of it that has caused the public most concern. Anybody that lives down around that area will know the traffic issues that you have, and it used to be just maybe in an evening, but they're about a constant now. So having the Pennyburn roundabout, as you addressed, will definitely be welcomed by everyone in the area. So look, it's really good to see the integrated care. It's really good to see the mental health facilities that are going to be incorporated in it, primary care, and then of course physio and other specialised. And it will take a bit of the pressure off the hospital. It will definitely help in terms of GP access for the public as well. So I just want to thank you for coming on today and giving us that update. I mean, I think as a city and district, we talk about having great ambitions. We talk about wanting to make sure that we have the best services possible for the people that live here. And I think that a modern facility like this that is right on our riverfront, that is easily accessible for our population, and particularly, I mean, I know anybody that goes to out hours, it's not always a pleasant experience. So hopefully if we have this as a new modern facility, you know, anyone that goes is going to get the best possible service that they can. So I look forward to it going into being submitted to planning. I look forward to seeing it go through those processes and hopefully see it delivered on the ground. So thank you very much for the presentation today.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Pauline, Maura and Wendy for coming here today on behalf of the SDLP. I would echo the remarks of Councillor Duffy. This is, a really, really worthwhile delegation, and you've come with really, really good news about the health hub soon to be, the planning application for the health hub soon to be lodged. It represents a massive investment, and we're going to hopefully have a state-of-the-art facility which is going to improve health services and improve health outcomes right across this city and district. So it's a really, really exciting proposal. But I want to touch on the wider Fort George site. So it's a key strategic site in our city. It's been within the ownership of Stormont through various departments for 21 years. At the minute, we've got one building there, which is Catalyst. We have planning approval for a second Catalyst building. We hope to have planning approval for the Western Health Hub in the future, but that still leaves the rest of the site vacant, empty, and it's a wasteland at the minute. It's a prime riverfront site. It offers a massive, massive opportunity for this city, and public opinion is that it's been overlooked and ignored for far too long. So I've got a question about the remainder of the site. What are the plans? I see in the presentation that there's development site 1, development site 2, development site 3. Does DFC have a view on potential usage for those sites? Because that would be really important to know. So that's my question. Really, really welcome the deputation. Really, really welcome the proposal in terms of the health hub because it's needed. But what about the remainder of the site? Because people want to know, it's been lying there vacant for so long. I was walking past it the other day and it was just so much of a missed opportunity at the minute. So it would be really useful to know how DFC sees future usage at those 3 vacant lots that are going to be included in the planning application. But thank you very much, folks.
Thanks, Councillor Farrell. I'm going to take a few questions and then we'll come back to you. Councillor Heaney.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to you all for the excellent presentation. And like others, this is a fantastic development and really welcome and a very long-standing site that we really want to see used and used well. I had a couple of queries, but in fairness, you have largely addressed them in your presentation. One was around the traffic management. As we all know, it's at saturation point at the Bunclana Road at peak times, and so it's important that you have the roundabout in your plans, and also that the access point is away from the roundabout and around, including the Bay Road and elsewhere. So that eases some of the concerns I had around that. The other issue that had been raised was just a concern that this facility would simply hoover up other existing health centres in the city, and there would be a loss of services in local areas and communities that currently exist now. I'm glad again that you've been very clear in your presentation is about removing services from Altnagalvin that's overstretched and a huge packed site, and having a step up really from a health centre and a totally new facility between health centre and hospital, which will be welcome. So as I say, the questions and concerns that I intended to ask you about, these have largely addressed, so just leave it at that. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Connor. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair, and my apologies for missing the initial part of your presentation. I had a question reference target finalisation. Perhaps that was that was given earlier on, but what is the target for the actual opening of the site? And I'm not going to look the gift horse in the mouth, but I tend to agree with Councillor Farrell there. That element towards the river and the quay that's along there, one would like to see that developed, but let's concentrate on what is there at the moment. It undoubtedly is a facility that is going to ease the burden, as Councillor Heaney has alluded to there, throughout other elements of health provision throughout the city and indeed throughout the northwest, one can well imagine. And I'm well aware of the issues around Catalyst and the parking shortfall that there is there. Go to that building now and again, and cars are parked all over the place. So, with regard to the 700 car parking spaces that are proposed, how many staff will be working in the facility itself? And has that been taken into your calculations with regard to, you're proposing 700, and indeed to the other development opportunities that exist there? It is welcome that that is being provided, but, is the ability there to expand that? And I note on the Oma site, which I'm more familiar with, the Enhanced Hospital in Oma, there is a regular bus drop-off at that site. And I think the same operates at Alton Galvin. Will that facility be incorporated into this site in the road system, that there will be a bus drop-off point, or is it just utilising the existing bus stops on the Strand Road? We've got to be aware that it will be a lot of local people using this, and they'll be coming in buses. They're not coming in cars. So hopefully that can be taken into consideration, or has already been taken into consideration on the site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. There is quite a few questions there, so I'll go back to yourselves before we pick up one on a endpoint.
Yes, thank you. I'll maybe take the DFC related ones first, and then I'll pass to the trust colleagues as well. So just in terms of the first point really from Councillor Farrell there, just in terms of the wider plans for the Fort George site. So we did mention in broad terms there the blue lands. Now we're still working through our pre-application discussion with planners on the blue lands. So we're not at a stage yet to go into the plan period for blue lands as yet, but we're hoping to be at that stage in the coming months. So I would say that in the coming months, I would hope to come back to yourselves and give you some more detail. But in broad terms, really, just to explain, there was always an intention for Fort George to be used for mixed-use development. So that would be for office, residential and retail. And that broadly would remain the intention for the site. Now, ultimately, I suppose, if you were to ask me today what's going to be on those blue lands in 5 years' time, I couldn't tell you, because what will ultimately determine what's on that site will be the marketing process that we'll have to do in due course. So what we're trying to allow for is that mixed-use development that encompasses every, or most eventualities, as it were. And then ultimately, when we market the site, then it'll be for a private developer to come forward with their own plans and take forward through to the next stage as such. So that's where we are in terms of the blue lands. In relation to the specific question around the bus drop-offs, in terms of bus drop-offs, we have provided for and designed for bus drop-offs on both sides of the Strand Road. And also in terms of the site itself, we are continuing discussions with TransLink in terms of potential availability of bus drop-offs within the site, but that has to be explored further. But in terms of the Strand Road, there will be bus drop-offs on both sides of the Strand Road, and there'll be crossover points over to the Fort George site. If I pass now to my trust colleagues, maybe just to take up some of those other points, please.
Thank you. I'm going to pick up the one around staff in terms of how many staff is going to be on the site. So we are looking at around 450 staff at any given time that will be on the site, but they wouldn't all be there at the same time. There is a very good infrastructure, as Pauline has just talked about, in terms of public transport. And of course, we would be encouraging people to use public transport for those who would be coming onto the site. And then the other piece for us is that some of that staff would be in and out as well, because it is a community-based integrated service. So in terms of the staff, it has been factored in to the parking or the multi-storey car park. So we have factored that in when we were looking at the size of the car park. But Wendy, did you want to say anything else on that?
No, not just to confirm what you said, Maura. It is definitely factored in. Staff numbers is probably the driving key calculation, but we also look at the type of staff that's there. For example, for every consultation room, and there's lots of them in the building, I think there's a dedicated space and there's a throughput for that as well too. So that's what's informed that numbers. There's a formula behind it. So we're confident that it will work for us. And even with the change with staff, and a lot of the staff won't be in the building, with COVID and stuff, we've moved to people using tablets and stuff from and working outside their main office space. So that's quite useful too, as well, to try and manage those numbers. Maybe just to pick up the question about an opening date, I suppose the next step for us now is to do what we call our outline business case stage 2. So that really is us then moving forward and requesting the confirmation of an approval of the funding to actually do the complete design, which is take it through tender stage, and also then award the construction contract after that. So at the minute we've been constantly flagging the project to Department of Health, and we will keep doing that. But the timeline for delivery of the building will be part of the Department of Health's plan for rollout as well.
Okay, I'm going to move on now to our next batch of questions. People are content? First on my list is Alderman Cook online.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in, and thanks to Pauline, Maura and Wendy for the presentation. It will be great to see this vacant site on the riverfront transformed, and for it to be transformed into something that is very needed in the city, a health and care centre, will be great to see. Not only the job opportunities that it'll create, but I really like the idea of the community involvement, and also the services that it's going to provide are also welcomed. I did have a look at the proposed designs, and I'm really, really excited for this project, and I look forward to see it develop. The only questions I kind of had were covered were in regards to timescales and the development of the other sites. So as I say, they're already covered. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. I just realised during the discussion I do have a declaration of interest. I'm married to a city-side GP principal, so I need to put that on record. It could potentially affect it, but I don't know, second thought. But just one question, I'm just one on the discussion. How many GP practices would you be seeking to accommodate within the new facility, just as a matter of interest? Thank you.
Well, at the moment, it's Chantallo and Great James Street. So it's those practices at the moment. And that is the proposal at this stage.
Okay, and the final indicated speaker is Councillor Donnelly.
Good Chair, and thank you for the presentation. And to me, it seems, it's very, very welcome plans here. Given the crisis that we have in the city and people trying to access GPs and access dentists, I would hope that it would make an impact on that. However, I think that given the severity of that crisis, I'm just not sure what type of impact. I'm not sure if you, if you know, if that can be dealt with or whatever. But by and large, it's in my opinion a welcome development, and I'm glad that it's went down this route, particularly the health and care aspect. Thanks for your presentation.
Okay, members, I haven't, in that last round, there hasn't been any questions on Councillor Mooney's. It was answered. So, and I've no further indicated speakers. I'm going to pass back over to yourselves if you just want to sum up and give a bit of a summary of it in relation to the presentation and what you've heard.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, just to say again, we really are glad of the opportunity to come along. This is part of a series of consultation pieces that we're doing. Last week was the public consultation event. It happened there at Da Vinci's Hotel, and we got good feedback, that there was good attendance from that, and there was good positive feedback, and also some feedback that we can certainly take on board as well as we move through the process. So as a lot of you will be aware, the PAN period runs for 12 weeks. So we will, as it were, be still engaging throughout that process. We'll be still engaging with our key stakeholders across the board and with the planning team here in council as we move forward, and just to pay tribute to the planning team for their help and assistance as well as we've moved through this process. But yes, just to thank you all and to thank my colleagues in the trust side as well. We've been very much, and really just to emphasise, I think the key thing I want to emphasise is we have been working very much collaboratively across governments with this one, and it's a good example of how we can do things working together. So yeah, I'm really pleased and really glad of the team that we have here, that we're able to do what we've done. So yeah, so we're looking forward to the next stage, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, and let's hope that it's not. I know there is a lot of excitement in relation to this project, and let's hope that the next time that this committee or council's getting an update, it comes a lot sooner than the last one. But I think what we see and what's very clear now is that there's a fair degree of momentum behind the Fort George project, and we're all very keen to see it delivered. Is a pleasure to welcome Alexander Brennan under the Chamber, coordinator for the NA Women's Budget Group. And we've got Aoife Mallon, the Research and Engagement Associate at Ulster University online. So without further ado, I'm going to hand directly over to Alexander, and we'll take it from there.
Hi, I'm Alex Brennan. I'm the coordinator of the Northern Ireland Women's Budget Group, and online is my colleague Aoife Mallon, who's the Research and Engagement Associate at Ulster University, and we're a part of a joint project funded by JRCT looking at how gender budgeting could work in Northern Ireland. So I'll go into a bit of the background of the project and where we are currently, and then I'll explain a bit about gender budgeting. So next slide, please. So this is the entirety of the team, 4 members from Ulster University and 3 members from the Northern Ireland Women's Budget Group. And so far, we've had 3 phases of the project that have been funded by JRCT, and we're currently in the 3rd phase now. So the first phase consisted of a number of interviews with officials and found that there was a lack of understanding of what equality actually means. So as opposed to bringing about equal outcomes for everyone via policies, you know, there was more of a focus on either doing the same thing for everybody or not doing anything for anyone. So again, that was sort of the main, one of the main aspects that came out of the first project, and also lack of compliance or incorrect usage of Section 75, more of a tick box exercise. The second phase was focused on research. And during this phase, the Ulster University research team published 3 separate working papers. So the first was, what does the literature tell us? Lessons for Northern Ireland. And this was about building a foundation of what gender budgeting is and essentially how it could work in Northern Ireland. The second paper was a case study on apprenticeships in Northern Ireland, which using NISRA data, it demonstrated the existence and perpetuation of gender inequalities in apprenticeships and HLAs quite starkly. And it was trying to draw attention to how gender budgeting can help mitigate those inequalities within one specific area. And the third working paper that came out in that second leg of the project was around a gender audit of the Northern Ireland Programme for Government from 2016 to 2021. And this was about analysing the visibility of gender in overarching policies in Northern Ireland, using the Programme for Government as a policy that determines the priorities of government. And the research found that a lot of gender neutral language was taken by policy, or used by policymakers, I should say, and it outlines that the implications of this on gender equality outcomes, and how having gender not included within the priorities of government meant that there was worse equality outcomes regarding gender, but also as a whole. So currently, like I said before, we are in the 3rd phase of this project, which does have a focus on research. Currently, the university team is working on a paper on procurement and social value, but there's also a training aspect incorporated into it. So in the summer of 2023, we conducted 3 pilot training sessions. The first one was held here in Derry, the second in Belfast, and the last in Cookstown. And there was an evaluation from this report, again, from the university team. And this was general gender budgeting training, majority of which was from the women's sector, but also wider equality sector as well. Just going over what gender budgeting is, demystifying the budget process, as well as you know, showing how gender budgeting could be used in practice. In summer 2024, we conducted multiple train the trainer sessions, which was taking participants from the previous general gender budgeting pilot training sessions and teaching them or training them up on how to train groups of their choice on what gender budgeting is. And I suppose this was a way for us within the civil society sector to spread the word and understanding of what gender budgeting is, because you can see our team is small enough. And again, those sessions were held in Derry, Belfast, and Cookstown. And then another series of training sessions are planned for summer 2025. And some of this is targeting specific sectors. For example, we're planning training with the youth sector, but we also plan to hold general gender budgeting training sessions just for any sort of civil society group to sign up for as well. And just to touch on again, before I go into what gender budgeting actually is, a bit of the impact of this project so far. So in 2021, there was a gender budgeting motion passed by the Women's Caucus, which had cross-party support and didn't end up going to the Assembly with the collapse of government. But again, you know, from 4 years ago from now, cemented that there is a cross-party understanding of the importance of incorporating this sort of analysis into policy making and decisions around spend. There was a motion passed here in February 2023 around gender budgeting, and that has led to some of our work developing a pilot within Derry City and Strabane District Council, which Aoife will talk about a bit later. And this is the first council and the only council so far to do so, which is significant, and really anywhere in Northern Ireland. The gender budgeting was included in the Department of Finance's Budget Sustainability Plan in October 2024, and it also, a motion was passed in the Assembly on gender budgeting in January 2025, and since then we've been engaging with the Department of Finance on how they move forward with that. Next slide, please. So about what gender budgeting is, some of the main objectives of gender budgeting are about mainstreaming a gender perspective into public finance, about analysing, monitoring and reporting on the equality impacts of a budget through a gendered lens, and about using budgets as a tool for advancing equality. And I think it's important to note here that when we talk about a gender perspective or gender equality here, we're not looking at women as one homogenous group or one homogenous block, I should say. We're recognising that within the identifier of gender, a lot of other inequalities that are protected by Section 75 and some of them that aren't must be considered. So really an intersectional lens must be applied when doing this sort of assessment. Next slide, please. I think it's also important to note, sometimes the concept itself or the title of gender budgeting can be a bit misleading. Some people think, for example, it's one budget for women and one budget for men, or you're only looking at items of spend with a particular gendered aspect, but it's not necessarily that at all. You're not creating multiple budgets or different budgets for women and men. It's about identifying aspects of the budget that can help improve gender equality and other equality aims. It's not only to benefit women, because this approach is centered within data and research, and if the data demonstrates or illustrates that there's an inequality faced by men and boys, for example, we would hope that spend and policy would be targeting that inequality as well. So it's not only to benefit women. It's not just demands for more spending. A lot of it is about how we use the spending that we have, based off of the data that we have, using that spend wisely, basically to target it as effectively as possible. And it's not only about gender specific budget items, as I said, it could be about anything. I think a lot of the times people would associate something like this with childcare or, for the gender equality strategy, for example, within the Department for Communities. But it could be about infrastructure, it could be about, building a primary care site, what we were talking about before. So all those sorts of, any sort of item of spend can have this level of analysis applied to it. And I think essentially gender budgeting is equality analysis through a gendered lens. In Section 75, we would see as a foundational tool for gender budgeting here. The next slide, please. So this is just a bit about the OECD's work on gender budgeting. So they would, we've attended for 2 years now the OECD's gender budgeting network meeting, which is a meeting of a number of different nations or local authorities that are talking about their own experiences of implementing gender budgeting or working within that sphere. So over 61% of OECD member states use some form of gender budgeting, and they estimate that gender budgeting could increase average GDP in Europe by 9.2% in the next 30 years. And it's really important to note that this isn't just, gender budgeting isn't only about achieving better quality outcomes, which is a significant aspect of it, but it's good budgeting because it encourages transparency in the budget process. It strengthens links between policies and budgets, and it encourages evidence-based policy making, as well as facilitates meaningful implementation of equality and human rights duties. And again, like I just said, of who attends the gender budgeting network meetings, gender budgeting doesn't only have to be done at a national or devolved level, but it can be also done or employed at regional or local authority levels. For example, for the longest time, Spain didn't do gender budgeting, but one of its autonomous regions, Andalusia, did. So again, it doesn't have to be at both levels of government, but obviously it's helpful if, if there is a bit of harmony between a devolved and local government. But I think it's important to note as well that we can tap into that OECD network and facilitate peer-to-peer support as well, as especially as the council goes through this journey. Next slide, please. And just, gender budgeting requires a gender-based analysis of data, and you can analyze the budget as a whole or a portion of the budget for quality impacts. And for example, within the pilot, we're looking specifically at the area of leisure. And some types of gender budgeting tools include gender impact assessments, gender budget statements, or gender tagging of budgets, which essentially is assigning different areas of spend or assigning them as having a specific, gender equality impact, a positive impact, negative impact. And these tools don't have to be added all at once. is kind of the success or the benefit of gender budgeting lies in its flexible nature. So its implementation is tailored to the context of the place. So for example, the motion was passed at the assembly level on gender budgeting. The motion was passed here. The way that we would see gender budgeting working within the Department of Finance would be completely different to the way that it works here, obviously because the contexts are different. And I'll hand over to my colleague Aoife now. Next slide.
My name is Aoife Mallon, and as Alex said, I'm the Research and Engagement Associate at Ulster University, based in the Department for Accounting, Finance and Economics, and we're partnering with the Women's Budget Group on this project, which is funded by the Joseph Rowntree Charitable Trust. And as Alex mentioned, the reason for this work, the kind of starting point for it, was the gender budgeting motion that was passed in February 2023. But we also consider the Council to be a great place to start for the first gender budgeting pilot in Northern Ireland for several reasons, including the Council has a reputation for leading on key social issues, including its work on climate action. It also has a very active and engaged local community voluntary sector, which we know through training local groups and really experiencing firsthand the enthusiasm and passion for driving forward change and finding innovative ways to improve equality outcomes, particularly through the use of budgets. Next slide, please. So how could gender budgeting benefit the Council? As Alex mentioned, gender budgeting has the ability to create better linkages between budgets and policy outcomes, and it's really about making sure that the Council's budget reflects what its equality objectives are. It also allows the Council to deliver demonstrable action to tackle inequalities in the local area, consolidate equality data and identify data gaps, which is the first stage of the pilot, which I'll talk a bit about in the next slide, and deliver on the 2023 gender budgeting motion. Next slide, please. And just to give you an idea of where we are with the pilot at the minute, we began with a series of introductory meetings over the course of the last year, including the senior leadership team last December. And through that meeting, it was decided that the pilot would focus on leisure within the council area. And sort of following on from that, Alex and myself have been doing some capacity building within the council, giving different presentations on what gender budgeting is and how it can be implemented by the council, because we understand that this is a new concept for many people, and it's important to make sure that we have a strong foundational level of understanding about what it is and also why it's useful to the council, as well as useful for increasing levels of equality and tackling specific social inequalities. And then in recent months, a working group has been established to guide the work of the pilot going forward. And this includes officials from different areas, including leisure itself, but also officials who have a focus on accounts. And a lot of it has sort of been led by Ellen Kavanagh and Rachel McKay. And we're really grateful for all the support we've received through the working group. I think something that we've been sort of keen to emphasise going forward is this is a piece of work within the council, and myself and Alex are there to guide and support and direct the work plan going forward. But we've really appreciated the motivation and buy-in from the council so far. So where we are at the minute is we're still in the data scoping stage of the pilot. As Alex said, gender budgeting is based on data. It's really important that you have a strong basis for analysis. So at the minute, we're gathering all data relating to equalities, gender equalities within the council area. And what we sort of hope to do with that is consolidate the relevant contextual data, perform gender-based analysis of additional data, and produce a report that will support the council in tackling inequalities in leisure going forward. And a key piece of that data is the legend data that comes from leisure centres. So we're looking at membership data from looking at who uses gym classes, swimming, also pitch usage as well. So we'll be the research team at Ulster University will be doing a report summarising all of that data, which will hopefully be useful to the council in guiding the work going forward. And looking ahead, then the working group are hoping to meet soon to look at progress in the data scoping exercise and make sure we have everything we need to go forward. And I'm going to pass back over to Alex just to finish up and take questions. But I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to present, and it's been great working with the council so far. So thank you.
Yeah, no, just to say thank you as well, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, and thanks, Alex and Aoife. Very interesting presentation, and I can't believe it was 2023 when that motion was passed to council. But again, just to commend all the work that was done, and it continues to be done in relation to the pilot and the work from officers as well, the working alongside you. I've got one indicated speaker so far, Councillor McGinley.
Very good, Chair, and thank you, Alexandra and Aoife. It was, as Christopher said, that was a really interesting presentation. I think it highlights the good work that's already going on, and we're really looking forward to seeing that rolled out throughout the pilot. I think it's really important work in terms of tackling inequality, but it also seems like a common sense approach to doing things. So thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you to the officers that you're working with. And as I say, we're really looking forward to seeing how this has an impact for the council going forward. Thank you.
Councillor McDade.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alex and Aoife, for the presentation. I agree with Emma. It's really interesting actually to see, and it's good to see a move towards it. And it's great that our council is kind of leading the way too with it. It's just always good to remember that they're instrumental the best. I just thought it was interesting. I really like the myth busting because I think it's important, because I think sometimes when people hear gender, automatically think, oh, that's giving women more now. That's what that's about. And it's not. It's about leveling the playing field. It's making sure that everything is equal. So I think it's a really important slide for everyone to kind of take in and absorb. I think just the only thing I wanted to ask was just the pilot. It sounds like it's moving, but I just wonder how long it'll last, because sometimes I think we say pilot and then they seem to go on and on and on. So do we have like a time frame? And I know that Aoife had mentioned next steps, but I'm just wondering how long do we think it'll take until we kind of have results? But no, thanks so much for the presentation and for coming in. Thank you.
Yeah, so actually, like if it was saying we're in that data scoping phase, so we wouldn't even necessarily say that the pilot's been rolled out, but we're really in development of it. And I think, like you said, the motion passed in 2023, but then there were council elections and everything, so that kind of delayed things. We probably didn't start work on it with Ellen until the autumn 2023. But I completely understand you don't want pilots to run on and then, not really turn into anything else. And I think what we're hoping for, based off of, where we are at the minute with the working group within leisure, is to develop the pilot over the course of the next couple of months, and then hopefully by the start of the next financial year to actually roll something out, or at least get some sort of tools. Because I suppose with this process, and like I was saying, it'll look different everywhere. The tools that are being implemented will be different everywhere, but they don't necessarily all have to be implemented at once. And I think, the data piece is massive, because you need to know what kind of data you have, what data you need to collect, how to properly utilize it, how to analyze it necessarily with not just a general equality way, but with an intersectional lens, with a gendered lens. So, I think at the minute we are just building up that capacity within the council to do that sort of work, and exploring what sort of tools to first implement. And then again, like I said, hopefully we'd start the pilot by the next financial year. But again, it's dependent on what kind of data we have and how we move forward with that.
Okay, I have no further indicated speakers. I do have a question myself, and it's and I suppose that in relation to addressing inequalities, there's not going to be many from this part of the world that would argue against the importance of addressing inequalities. And in the presentation we were given an update around the engagement with the department, and I think that was as late as January of this year. But if we're going to address inequalities, and it's brilliant to see that it's not only at council level, but at departmental level as well, that there's that the gender budgeting is at the very least being explored. Is there any merit in us reaching out to other councils and encouraging other councils, or should we wait until this pilot is finished first before we start sharing the knowledge? Picking on Councillor McDade's point in relation to us being the only council that's involved in this, should we write to other councils and encourage them to they explore somewhere.
No, absolutely. So I suppose at the minute it is myself and Aoife essentially that are the ones engaging with the council, and Liz Law, who's a member of the Women's Budget Group. So I think Aoife was speaking at an event in Enniskillen where when she said that this was the only council doing it, councillors that were attending that event were very curious as to why they weren't doing it as well, or why they weren't exploring opportunities for a pilot. I suppose at the minute it's a capacity issue for ourselves, just being the 2 or 3 of us, and us being based mainly in Belfast, that's maybe more of an issue. But I think, even raising it with the other councils couldn't hurt, because I think that's what we're trying to explore, is that, we want to focus all of our energy on the pilot in Derry at the minute. But, obviously we would like to see that expand once we get the pilot up and running. But I see Aoife's indicating to come in, so I'll let her come in.
Yeah, as Alex said, we're focusing on this council for the pilot, but there's no reason why other councils can't also explore gender budgeting. And there's quite a wide base of research and expertise on gender budgeting. For example, from the OECD, there's a lot of publications about it. And we would be more than happy to support councils if they are exploring gender budgeting and particularly making those connections with officials in the OECD. Also in Scotland, Wales and Ireland, they have different types of gender budgeting that could be useful for councils to explore. So I think we would encourage, as many people as possible to look into, the potential of gender budgeting within their own organisation. It might not be, a pilot in the same sense that we're looking at within this particular council, because as Alex said, we want to focus our energy here. But we would be more than happy to speak with officials and other councils who are interested in gender budgeting, and would really encourage them to access some of those research and publications on gender budgeting that exist from all over the world in different contexts.
And I think as well, even just, as we work through this process with the officers here, it would be helpful for officers and other councils to get an understanding of, the experience that officers here, particularly within leisure, are having within their journey of kind of getting this understanding and engaging with the pilot once we get it up and running.
Okay, well, just maybe as a follow-on from that, I don't want to propose or suggest anything that's going to distract away from the work that's been done in the pilot within this council area. But it wouldn't do any harm from this committee that we do write the other councils just to highlight the work that's been done, to make other councils aware of the pilot that's been carried out, and they let other councils know that we will provide an update as the pilot progresses.
Just take it as a proposal.
Yeah. Are members of the committee content with that? Councillor McGinley?
I was just going to say, if you need a seconder for that proposal, I'm happy to second it.
Yeah. Okay. Members content? Okay, so all left for me to do is just thank Alex and Aoife for attending today, and we look forward to getting updates from either yourselves or officers as the pilot progresses.
Yeah, thank you very much. And again, if there's any update further on in the process, we'd be more than happy to provide that to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members, moving on now to item 7 is chairperson's business, and I have a number of items. I haven't been contacted by anybody, but I've a number of items that I wish to raise myself. And I know this is going to be discussed at Business and Culture next week, and rightfully so, but I think it would be remiss of us to have this meeting on the back of the Jazz Festival, a very successful Jazz Festival, which just finished yesterday, and it was enjoyed by thousands of people. There was quite a lot of excitement and energy and jazz throughout our city. over the past few days. So I just want to commend everybody that was involved from council, everybody that was involved from the hospitality sector, and everybody who made the effort to come out and enjoy and contribute to another successful jazz festival. So I didn't want this meeting to pass without recognising the work that went on to making sure that that was successful. Councillor Duffy.
Yeah, just to agree with you, Chair. I was out and about over the weekend, met many of the council officers who have been involved and were overseeing events. And their dedication throughout the weekend as well was really, really evident. You know, they were just observing, seeing what was going on, making sure that everybody was enjoying themselves. And I have to say, I have attributed the good weather to them as well. It was an excellent weekend for the city. Really good to see so many people out and about, families enjoying the good weather. It was good to see the Gay McIntyre stage being used by so many schools and young people. And I know from talking to some of the teachers that were involved in the school orchestras and stuff who performed, they just buzzed off it all weekend. So congratulations to everybody that was involved. Thank you to the council officers. Thank you to our local talent who took part, and also thank you to those that travelled to the city who made it such a successful event. And I know from talking to many, many, many people from outside of the city over the weekend, they will be back because they all really enjoyed the sun and the music and the crack. So well done, everyone.
And on that positive note, I want to that another item of chair's business is just want to reflect on a meeting that took place this morning. I know some of the members of this committee were in attendance. It was led by our chief executive, and it was engagement with BT on the back of the devastating news that we heard last week, that there is a proposal for substantial job losses right beside this council chamber. And I know there's a lot of fear amongst those employees that are directly affected, and it does look very bleak. I just wanted to reflect on the meeting that took place. I want to thank council officers for making and outlining this council's very positive direction of travel for the economic prospects of the Northwest, and they ensure that those that had made the proposal, they close the local office with affecting 140 jobs, that they make sure that they were categorically clear that there's a real ambition for growth within this council area. There's really exciting plans for our riverfront, and there's a real momentum, particularly in the field of artificial intelligence and IT and that field of connectivity. So there's and then again, I just want to thank all the council members, the elected members who attended the meeting, and again made very positive contributions around what the city and district have to offer in respect to the people, the place, and the environment. So it was from my reflections in attending the meeting and hearing what other people had to say, it was very positive to hear everybody singing with the one voice around what the city and district have to offer, and singing with the one voice in relation to the devastating impact of the loss of an employer such as BT that would have to this city. So again, there'll be other committees that this may be discussed on, but given the meeting that took place this morning, I thought it would be it was important to reflect the views and my oversight of the meeting, our observations from the meeting. Free to bring anybody in, Councillor Duffy.
Just to agree with you, Chair, I was glad that we got the meeting this morning, and I thank John and the team for organising that. Myself and Padraig Delargy met with BT on Thursday last week as well. I don't think that we have any more information than what we received this morning. Whilst this is supposed to be a consultation, I don't think anybody at the meeting really felt that it was a consultation, and it is more of this is the direction of travel and this is what's happening. I know that we have also met and discussed the issue with some of the employees of BT, and a lot of those employees have been very, very loyal employees of BT for 20 plus years. And in fact, in the meeting on Thursday, BT acknowledged that the average length of service of their employees was 14 plus years on that site, which tells you the dedication that people have had to the site and to the company. So it is really disappointing to see that they are moving towards a centre of excellence, or a hub that they're calling it, in Belfast. I do welcome the fact that they are talking about the relocation of some of the staff. But it's disappointing that that's not going to incorporate all the staff that have been very loyal and given their time to do whatever BT had needed over the last number of years. I do welcome the fact that as a council we have said that we will work with them and work with the staff to see if there is anything that we can do to assist, to help and to support, and I think that's the space that we're in. But I think that the stark contrast in the two items here, Chair, in terms of the positivity around the Jazz Festival, the buzz around the town, but then this bad news for the town, it is not the direction of travel that we certainly seen or see the city moving in. We have been talking about addressing regional balance for quite some time. We have seen the impact of that over recent months, and we're going to talk about the airport very soon. We have had so many positive announcements. We have so much ambition around this city and district over the last while that this does absolutely feel like a blow, because it's not the direction of travel that we see ourselves going in, or in fact are going in. But it's just very disappointing that we're here. I look forward to, I know that the notice of motion last week talked about a meeting with the union as well, so I will look forward to having those discussions as well, because we need to do what we can to support the 140 people who are facing redundancy at this time. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to come on the jazz item as well, but you weren't looking. So just briefly on the Jazz Festival, I thought it was a fantastic event, a fantastic experience. I visited a number of venues over the weekend, and the atmosphere was electric. It really helped that the city was basking in sun, and there was just a party atmosphere wherever you went. And the Jive Aces even got a selfie with me. But on a more somber note, the engagement with BT this morning, which was really, really well attended by councillors and aldermen, and everybody was singing off the same page. Everybody was united in anger and disgust at the prospect of these 140 jobs leaving the city. And while we welcome the engagement with BT, our view is it was a box ticking exercise. They framed this discussion as these are proposals. These are proposals that 140 jobs may leave Derry. They aren't proposals. These are a fait accompli. It's a done deal. And unfortunately, these roles, some of them are moving to India, some of them are moving to Belfast. None of them are going to stay in this city and district. and that is devastating for the people directly impacted. And there was a report released last week, I think it was on the day of the actual announcement. There was an independent assessment of the economic impact of BT's operation in Derry. And they said, you know, there's £40 million per year as a result of employee wages through the supply chain. So that's going to be lost to our local economy. But really feel for the people directly impacted. And I've spoken to a number of employees at BT, and BT are saying there's this enhanced redundancy package, but it's capped at 12 years. So if you've worked 15 years, 20 years, 25, 30, in some cases, there's people who have given their entire adult life to working in BT. And very little of that is actually going to be reflected in the redundancy payment. You know, you can work there for 30 years, but your redundancy payment is capped at 12. And we think that is wrong. And we as a group put that to BT management, but they're having none of it whatsoever. So we appreciate the discussion with BT. They didn't give us the answers we want to hear. We want these jobs to remain in Derry. It's not going to happen, unfortunately.
Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me in. And just to concur with your comments, more so in regard to the officers, and thanks very much to the officers for organising and arranging that meeting today. Again, I agree with your comments and Councillor Duffy's comments and Councillor Farrell's. And again, I did state it myself. I felt that it was more of a box ticking exercise to say that BT had met with us. It is very disappointing in light of particularly what we're trying to do with the city deal and revamping that particular area of the city and in regards to the building. And of course then with the advancement, even as I stated, in regards to the broadband and the rollout of BT and moving into the fibre optic, particularly into the rural area, and the additional work that the BT group is getting. So I say it is very disappointing, but I do concur with your comments in regards to the work of the officers in arranging that. And just as I say, it's something that we will continue to fight to see what we can do for those individuals who are in the real difficulty of potentially losing their employment over this situation. But thank you, Chair, for allowing me in.
Okay. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. Unlike others, I wasn't able to attend the BT meeting, but the reports that I'm hearing at this meeting don't surprise me in the slightest. I think when BT made their original announcement with regard to the Belfast Centre, it was, foretold what was happening. It happened first in Enniskillen, it's moved on here now. And as you yourself, Chair, pointed out, and I totally agreed with you, it's the vacuum now that has to be addressed. I suppose there are a couple of issues. There's the treatment of the employees going forward by BT. I mean, it's absolutely scandalous. You hear the average period of time is 14 plus years, and yet they're capping at 12 years on redundancy. That's absolutely scandalous. And I don't know if anything can be done or taken forward on that. The jobs will go. They will move, sorry, they'll not go, they'll move from this area, they'll move initially to Belfast, and then there's those jobs that are moving to India. A vacuum is created, but that skilled workforce still exists here. And I trust that perhaps through business and community, I'm not sure, that there will be interaction with ministers at Stormont as to how they direct investment to this area, investment that can utilise those particular skills that have now been created. The vacuum, or that vacuum that has been created, we have that now, a pool of those workers, of quality workers that can be utilised by those who are coming into the area if they are encouraged to come. So I'm not sure what the way forward is with council, but I hope that officers will consider looking at alternatives and engaging with ministers at Stormont to see if that can be developed. Thank you, Chair.
And Councillor Donnelly.
Your Chair. Look, first of all, I'd like to thank officers for organising the meeting today, but I have to say that depressing was probably a word that I would use. And I think that's sort of talking to some councillors following the meeting. I think that sort of set a bit of a precedent. The BT rhetoric was eloquent. It was fancy. But it said nothing. It was nonsense. And I feel that we just wasted our time. But again, I'd like to thank officers for doing it, but we had to be there. I had to be there to hear the nonsense that was being fired out today in fancy language. In my opinion, exact same as the previous speakers or anybody else was at the meeting, it's a done deal. And this was a box ticking exercise. It wasn't about modernising or strategically, enhancing the business or the challenging market or changing behaviours of customers. It was corporate greed. And, and when it comes to that type of thing, these people are just going to be pushed aside. To me, it was a slap in the teeth. If we come out of that meeting today feeling down or depressed, how must the workers, them loyal workers that have, as Councillor Duffy said, the average 14 years, that has to be, in my opinion, it's a slap in the teeth to them. And not only them, but this district in general, because them people have helped that particular company create vast amounts of wealth. And when it comes to it, they're just treated like dirt. But again, I think it was important to have that meeting, and if there's anything else that can be done with council, elected reps, unions, in order to try and get the best deal property for the workers, then I think we need to be doing what we can.
Yes, and I felt it was important to give members an opportunity to reflect on their experience of the meeting, and I would agree with wholeheartedly with the sentiments that everybody that spoke today. But one of the things that does strike me, whilst it was a very disappointing meeting, and it does, I wouldn't hold out much confidence that there's a different outcome rather than the one that BT had proposed. It doesn't take away from the very exciting prospects that we have for our the very exciting vision that we have for our city and district. It doesn't take away from the huge potential that exists within the city and district. And I think we absolutely need to have that meeting with the unions as soon as possible to ensure that there's a fight for the best possible deal for those employees that are affected. But there also we need to redouble our efforts to ensure that we maximise the potential that exists within the northwest, and to maximise the potential that exists on the back of sort of economic direction coming from the department over the last year or so. So we can't allow this setback, and it is a setback. There's no doubt around that. They dampen our ambition in any way. So we look forward to those meetings, and I have no doubt that there will be opportunities again, whether it's committees next week or full council, they reflect on how their meetings went. And my final piece of chairperson's business is just to highlight the fact that this is my last meeting as chair, which is obvious. It delights a lot of people. And I just want to use this opportunity to thank most of you for your cooperation over the past year. Thank officers, all of which have been supportive, and I wish the incoming chair the very best in the year ahead. I do want to particularly thank the Deputy Chair, Alderman Cook. I think there has been there hasn't been there hasn't been a need for the deputies over the last year, but I understand that the last year has been a remarkable year for yourself, and I, as chair of the committee, just want to take this opportunity to congratulate Alderman Cook formally as from the committee for your on your new arrival. It's been a big year, and I just want to pass on our best wishes from the chair, and I going to end it on that very positive note. So
You're not getting away without me saying anything. Chair, on behalf of Sinn Féin, I just would like to thank you for the work that you have done over the past year as chair of the committee. And as you say, you haven't missed a meeting, so it's been good to have you there. You have conducted yourself absolutely fantastic over the year. There has been a real fairness that I feel from the chair over the past year. So thank you in relation to that, and thank you on behalf of our group for taking on the role. I would also like to take your opportunity to congratulate Councillor Cook or Alderman Cook on the birth of her new baby. And haven't got to see it yet, but I look forward to getting a wee hug off it sometime. But no, lovely, and congratulations to Alderman Cook as well. And thank you, Chair.
that's money.
Thank you, Chair. Just to concur with the remarks of Councillor Duffy. I think if again, sorry. No hugs, but just I could say thank you for your fairness throughout the year. You haven't missed a meeting, which was a testament to you for coming onto the committee and being here every month throughout your year as chair anyway. But I say thank you for your fairness and for chairing the meetings for the past 12 months, and also on behalf of our group to say congratulations to Alderman Cook on the birth of a new baby. And we and I'll just leave it at that, Chair. Thank you.
Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to predict anything with the meeting not over yet, but sincere thanks on behalf of the Unionist Party for the impartiality that you've shown in your position of chair. It's been appreciated by myself, and I'm sure by all throughout the chamber over the past year. It begins to get a bit worrying when I find myself in agreement with yourself on so many occasions, but that just goes to show that in bread and butter issues, there's a commonality across this chamber that has to be continued going forward. And like yourself and others, I congratulate Alderman Cook on the birth of her new child, and wish both well going forward, and wish yourself well, I'm not saying retirement, but as you move to other opportunities within the chamber going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Bring in Alderman Cook.
Thanks, Chair. And I just want to congratulate you as well on a good year. You've been a great chair, fair, and give everybody their opportunity. So thank you. And I just want to thank yourself and others for the lovely comments in regards to my wee daughter, Harriet. As you say, it wasn't an overly busy year for me as deputy, but just shows you the good job that you've done. So thanks very much again.
Okay, members. Councillor Donnelly, that's all right.
Chair. No, just like they say, my ogre to both yourself and Alderman Cook for your stewardship and Alderman Cook's potential stewardship, and congratulations there on the birth of her new baby.
Okay, moving on very swiftly to the matters arising from the open minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, 1st of April. Matters Rising, Councillor Heaney.
Thanks, Chair. It's GSP 57/25 or 23. I can't read my own writing. At the last Irish Unity Working Group, we received a presentation on the independent analysis done on the first phase of our consultation on the online phase. And in that report, there was a specific recommendation. I'll quote it. This consultation has identified several important themes that could be addressed in future research. More definitive findings could now be gained from a large qualitative survey based on a representative sample. So I would just like to ask, would it be possible to get a paper on how that recommendation could be taken forward to future governance meeting?
Well, officers will take that on board and
Yep.
brought back to future meeting of this committee.
And or
Okay. So that's taken forward. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. Item 71, and it's well into it, and it was in response to a question from Councillor Farrell that the Legal Services Officer confirmed that under standing orders, members could not approve a proposal to progress the 10% HMO cap during the current meeting. Given the widespread support voiced by councillors for that type of restriction, although it could not be brought forward at that committee meeting, could it be brought forward at full council? And I'm aware also of the autonomy of the planning committee and indeed their restriction via the current development plans that they operate under. But is there any way that council as a body generally can circumvent that current situation rather than waiting for so long until the new LDP is actually enacted? Thank you, Chair.
Chair, just through you, just to let you know, Alderman Hussey, there's a detailed paper coming before Planning Committee tomorrow on the issue. Very happy that it would be circulated to you this evening. You're not a member of the Planning Committee, am I right in saying so? Which sets out the issue clearly, the direction of travel, the position the council is now in, and any potential opportunity for amendment.
Chair, if I may, that's the difficulty I have. You know, when there is something that clearly the chamber seems to support, it's left in the control of the planning committee, rather than, you know, if council made a decision, how does that, you know, if council decided, yes, this is what we want to do, can they circumvent the current situation within the planning?
Chair, it's not a delegated matter for the Planning Committee. The paper is simply being presented to the Planning Committee. It will obviously then go forward to full council at the end of the month.
Thank you, Chair. That paper has been circulated. At what stage during the Planning Committee will that be discussed?
Yeah, through you, Chair, members, it's open for information, so it'll be at the time after the applications when it's open for information.
It in fact could be Thursday.
Yeah, it could be. And Alderman Hussey, because again, as I anticipated this discussion tomorrow or Thursday, and I've read the paper in great detail, and extremely frustrated around the legislative barriers that are in place to enact what you have rightly pointed out that every member of council wants to see. But again, there's the paper spells it out very clearly around the challenges that council face, and the various options that are available to council, and neither of them are palatable to those that are making presentations or those that have been very vocal, even from terms of council members, very vocal on the need to protect residential character of areas. Any further matters arising? Okay, moving on to item 9, the City of Derry Airport funding. Pass over to yourself first, John, initially.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose just in very broad terms, members, you're obviously aware of a very, very extensive piece of work that's been going on for years in terms of moving the funding of the airport onto a more sustainable basis. And by that, I mean not just simply this council. That has been subject to many discussions within this chamber, to many strategic papers. So before you today are 2 papers, one on open business that gives an overview of the very, very considerable progress in respect of these issues in recent months. And the further paper to be discussed in confidential business is simply some further detail on that is some commercial sensitivity with regard to the airport. But in very broad terms, members, there was a need to move the airport funding onto a more sustainable basis for 2 reasons. A, the medium to long-term future of the airport and its operations, and B, for this council to enable council to redirect funding into its key strategic capital projects as part of that overall funding mix for it. The 3-legged proposal, so to speak, in terms of the sustainable funding for the airport, where 1, from the UK government in respect of the PSO to London, 2, to the Northern Ireland Executive with regard to support for the subsidy for the airport, and 3, to the Irish government for the reintroduction of a PSO to Dublin. So 2 out of those 3 objectives have now been achieved, and the 3rd remains the subject of ongoing discussions with the Irish government. So it's a very, very big and important milestone for this council and the airport. And I'm going to pass to Denise just to take us through the detail, but also as Chief Executive to pay tribute to members who have articulated the need for this over many years, both within this chamber and at executive level and beyond, but also to the huge amount of work that has been undertaken by airport management, and in particular, from my perspective, to Alfie Dallas and Denise McDonnell and Philip Kingston in terms of trying to get the many very complex issues that are associated with all of this over the line, including the most recent, very detailed engagement and around subsidy control. Again, an issue which no other council has to deal with on this level, and for which there is no playbook and had to be taken forward from first principles through the expertise and competence of the 3 officers in particular that I've mentioned. So a very, very big moment for council that will unlock both the future of the airport and hopefully a very strategic component part of our strategic capital projects. So Chair, I'll just pass to Denise now.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, John. So, members, the purpose of this report then, the first one is to endorse the significant recent funding developments, which John has just spoke about there. So, members, you will be aware of the ongoing discussions that have been progressing in respect of the funding of the airport. Just a bit of background, in April 2021, Council approved and submitted a business case to Government for £3 million funding per annum over a 6-year period to share the operational funding burden of the airport and reduce the impact on ratepayers. An initial £3 million was secured and drawn down for Government for the 22-23 financial year, and since that, work has been progressing to realise the further 5 years funding requested in the business case. Further to the submission of an addendum to the business case in February 24, we received confirmation from the Minister for Infrastructure on the 14th of October 24 that funding of up to a maximum of £3 million would be provided towards the operating losses for the period 24-25. The letter of offer has recently been received for this funding, and the full 3 million has been successfully drawn down and received by Council. Alongside this, members, you will be aware that the London Heathrow PSO is separately funded by the Department of Transport in the UK and the Department of Economy here at 50% each at an annual cost of approximately 2.1 million. We've also been working very closely with the relevant UK and NI government officials to ensure that that funding is also continued beyond the 31st of March 25. So members, you all know that we were advised that responsibility for support for the period from 25-26 to 28-29 will be taken forward by the Department for Economy, and we've therefore been working very closely with officials to secure the necessary approvals required. This has been a complex process requiring updates to the business case to reflect the passage of time, robust scrutiny of the business case, including casework approval by the Department for Economy, as well as referral of the proposed subsidy to the Competition and Markets Authority to ensure that all subsidy control principles were adhered to. Thankfully, these work streams have now all successfully been concluded, and we received a very positive subsidy assessment report from the Competition and Markets Authority in January 25. Following this allowed the Coda funding business case to proceed through the Department for Economy, and on the 18th of April 2025, the Department for Economy assumed responsibility for providing annual operating funding of up to 3 million for Coda from the 1st of April 25. As the Chief Executive has said, this is an extremely positive outcome which provides certainty for the airport up to the 31st of March 2029 and recognises the vital role the airport plays in the economic development of the entire North West and enables the airport to plan for the future growth in the years ahead. It is important to note, members, that Council will continue to retain ownership and full responsibility for the funding of the airport, and Department for Economy funding will be provided to support Council in this regard. In relation to the London PSO funding, as we have stated previously, it is 50% funded by the Department for Transport and the Department for Economy. 24-25 has seen continued growth of the route, with 75,000 passengers being carried, representing an increase of 9.4% from 23-24. Whilst the tender was awarded to Loganair for a 4-year period until the 31st of March 27, funding has previously only been awarded by Government on an annual basis subject to performance review. Further to funding of 2.1 million being secured for 23-24 and 2.036 for 24-25, we have been working with the officials to secure funding going forward from 25. Thankfully, this process has also now been successfully concluded, with funding of 4.627 million now confirmed for the 2-year period from April 25 to March 27. Again, this is an incredibly positive result and the first time that funding has been secured for a period of beyond 1 year, and we will be engaging with DFE and DFT in early 2026 with respect to the retendering of the service beyond April 27. Despite the major impact of the pandemic and subsequent global crisis in the aviation industry, the airport has continued to grow and recover. In 24-25, the airport carried approximately 203,000 passengers, which was a 33% increase from 23-24. This included services to London Heathrow and Glasgow, Birmingham and Manchester, summer sun flights to Faro, school ski flights, Lourdes pilgrimage flights, as well as the recently introduced EasyJet services to Liverpool and Edinburgh. The airport is forecasting passenger numbers of approximately 283,000 for the 25-26 year, which will represent a further 39% growth on 24-25. In addition, the airport is working with Government to secure the reinstatement of the Derry to Dublin PSO route, which was cancelled in 2011. Again, this would be a significant further development for the airport, and it is extremely positive to note the commitment included within the Ireland Programme for Government 2025. The implications, members, there are included, but in terms of the financial implications, members, you will be aware that we currently provide rates funding of 2.1 million towards the operating costs at the airport, along with a further 1.3 million in capital loan charges funding. This represents a total of 3.445 million cost to the ratepayers. Council again does not provide any funding contribution to the London PSO route, as this is 100% funded. Further to the recent funding developments, the recurrent funding in place for the airport is detailed, members, in the table there for your information. As noted, the significant funding progress secured will reduce Council's recurrent funding contribution from 3.445 million to 1.54 million. The 1.9 million recurrent saving realised from Council's recurrent operational budget has been agreed by Council through the rates process to be recurrently redirected towards the financing of its ambitious strategic leisure projects in Derry and Strabane. Again, members, you're asked to endorse the significant recent funding developments and progress in respect of the airport. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, John and Denise, for the report. And I am actually really delighted to have the opportunity to propose and endorse the report. We have sat in this chamber many, many times and had really difficult conversations around the airport. So it's just really good to be sitting here with such a positive report in relation to everything around the airport. You know, we have seen the support from the executive. We have seen what can happen when a focus has been put on the airport in terms of when Minister Conor Murphy was in place in the Department for Economy, put a real focus on the airport, seeing the value of the airport for the connectivity and for the economic development of the entire Northwest. And through that executive team, working with yourselves, working with the airport board, knew the direction of travel this needed to go on and knew that the support that needed to be put in place. So it's great to actually get to this place where we have the PSO in place, we have the business case now finally approved, and I have to say the complexity of that, I don't know why I'm going to say it shocked me, because I would never know what would be involved in the business case around that. And, you know, the amount of work that everybody put into that was absolutely tremendous. So I have to thank yourself, John, Denise, Philip, Alfie and Steve out at the airport, because hours and hours and hours of work went into that, and a real concentration and focus had to be put on it. So all that work has finally paid off, and we are seeing an airport now where we're seeing passenger numbers going in the right direction. Almost 40% growth is absolutely tremendous for any airport in the current climate. And we know the aviation industry, it is a complex area, and it is open to fluctuations. But so we have seen 40% growth in the last number of years in terms of passenger numbers. We have seen carriers come back. We have seen Ryanair and we have seen EasyJet coming on board. These are all really welcome steps. We know the impact the airport has around connectivity. We know the need for it for the business community. We know the need for it for our tourism industry. But we're seeing that benefit trickle out now in terms of everyone around the Northwest who wish to use the airport to travel and see the benefit of having that on our doorstep. The next step is around the Dublin PSO. And I know in terms of Patrick McLaughlin, our TD for Donegal, he has been pushing this in terms of what the Dublin government. We have the Northwest Regional Development Group that has spelled out these ambitions to the Taoiseach, and the Taoiseach has seemingly come on board with that and mentioned it within the programme for government as well. So I'm really, really hopeful for the future of the airport. It's the first time that I have been in council, and I've been in council 11 years, that I see a real stability around the airport and a real positivity around it within, you know, the general public as well, who are seeing that benefit and seeing using it exactly. So I want to congratulate you for all the work that has gone in to getting us to this stage. We knew what it could be. So it's good now for other people to actually see that and grasp that. So I'm delighted to propose such a positive report, and also to mention as well the knock-on effects in terms of strategic leisure. And selfishly, I will mention Templemore. So it's all very, very good news. So thank you again for the report.
Okay. And the Templemore comment was expected. Alderman Cook.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in, and I'm happy to second if needed. I would just like to thank Denise for the report, and to John as well, and I'll just concur with Sandra. And just to put on record that on behalf of the DEP, we very much so welcome the positive news on the secured funding and the certainty of our airport up until March 2029. And secondly, I just want to thank our council officers for all their hard work and the engagement with the departments to get us this far. So long may it continue, and well done to Alfie and the team.
Okay, Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. would just want to concur with the remarks from Councillor Duffy and Alderman Cook. This is really good news, and on behalf of the SDLP, we'd like to thank the entire officer team that was involved in this massive piece of work. The entire board at CODA and, the people in the Department for the Economy who approved the business case. So it's really encouraging. It gives us funding certainty until 2029. It's an investment of £3 million, up to £3 million per year. And we've got confirmation also about the PSOD London that funding is in place until 2027. So it's all really welcome. It's long overdue. And it removes a substantial financial burden from ratepayers across this city and district, which can be reinvested in the strategic leisure projects. And I too will say that it's fantastic news for Templemore. And the figures in there about growth at the airport, about passenger numbers increasing year on year, it's really encouraging. And I hope that with this funding certainty and potentially news about a new Dublin route, that the airport can go from strength to strength. So it's a really positive paper and it's fantastic news for the Northwest. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly.
Good Chair, and for the 10 odd years I'm in here, it's been a very divisive issue, and at times, there was a lot of acrimony over that. But I think, where people were coming from, it was almost a burden. It was a burden to this council. So it's very welcome to see it, such a positive report. And I'd like to thank the officers and the work that was put in to get us to this stage. I'm sure it wasn't easy, is probably the understatement of the year, but this should have happened a long time ago. And look, we just hope now that when we have it at this stage, that it progresses. As we say, the numbers are rising and that. So hopefully it's the beginning of a success story rather than a noose around this council neck. Thank you.
Alderman Hussey.
Just briefly to concur with remarks across the chamber. Congratulations and well done to all internally who have worked to bring this to fruition. Thanks to those government departments who have weighed in and backed the project. This is a regional facility in need of regional contribution to it. With regard to the savings to council, I hear I think it was Councillor Duffy who started off with Templemore, and there will be many calls, and presumably that will be something we'll be looking at tomorrow morning. There will be many calls for the redistribution of funds that are being, I suppose, released. And remember that those funds come from ratepayers across our entire district. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. I don't have any further indicated speakers, but it is the recommendation proposed by Councillor Duffy, seconded by Alderman Cook. There's no dissenting voices, so I'm going to take that as unanimously passed. It's a fantastic development, and it's a clear demonstration of what can be achieved if government work together, well, at assembly level and here at local council. We can achieve so much, and I know when we speak, and I know Alderman or Councillor Duffy mentioned Templemore, but the funding strategy for Templemore and Riversdale was discussed quite at length, and it was no secret that that this council has huge ambitions to deliver strategic leisure right across the council area, and there was and council had demonstrated that not only by submitting the business case and lobbying hard for support for the airport, but also putting our trust by making RITS investments. That 1.5% added on to the RITS for a number of years was a key component of the strategy. But it was another key component of that was the release of the funding from the airport or the support to the airport. And now we're here, so it shows that ambition and having that faith and trust can result in massive successes or achieving what many people had said was beyond the reach of our council. So this is what's fantastic news for the airport, and picking on Councillor Donnelly's point around that this should have happened a long time ago. It's hard to argue with that, but the fact remains is that the council at this part of the world felt the need to invest in an airport because they were let down by a government. This is a huge statement that now that there's a government stepping up and addressing the huge service that was placed on the people and the businesses and the economy of the Northwest. So this is redressing some of the wrongs of the past. There's a huge way to go, but this is a major step. So I'm delighted to see that this committee has endorsed the recommendations in the report, and we can move on in a very positive light. And on that note, members, we have passed the 2-hour mark, and I'm going to propose we take a 10-minute comfort break. So we'll be back here at 6:15.